What's going on, everyone? Welcome to opening day, MLB, Thursday, March 27th, 2025. Baseball season's finally back. Can stop talking about basketball. Not that I was doing it very much anymore anyway, but excited to get into MLB. Going to be doing these shows a lot more consistently than I was NBA since it takes a lot less of my time, or MLB in general takes a lot less time for me than NBA does. I'll have more time to do these shows. So definitely keep an eye on the channel. These will be up here a lot more, but I'm going to go through game by game as usual, taking a look at my player exposures for DraftKings, how I'd be attacking the large field DraftKings tournaments today. Bear with me as we go through the show. Obviously, things are usually a little bit clunkier, more difficult to talk about at the beginning of a season. I have not given baseball any thought in 6 months. I am still programmed to talk about basketball and not have to think twice about it. So I'm sure I will make a few mistakes here or just not have a page pulled up that I would like to have pulled up. Stuff like that, gets ironed out after a few days. But also at the top, exciting news for me in general, hopefully for you guys as well. We do have MLB DFS projections live on Run the Sims as well. We are still working on getting our full model nailed down. We have a target date for that of April 7th. But until then, Utica is putting up his own personal projections straight from his brain that he has been using for years. I don't know how he does it that way, but he does. They're good. So you can use those over there. Use the promo code UTAMLB. It gets you 10% off until April 7th when our full model goes live. Those will be $100 per month for the projections, but again, you get 10% off until April 7th. Yuta is putting up his personal ones until then. And then we do have, like I said, a model that I'm really excited about, driven by Utica, that we will be going live with. So really excited to have that stuff ready for the start of the season, or at least very close to it. Now, diving in, starting with the Red Sox taking on the Rangers. We have Garrett Crochet going for the Red Sox. We have Nathan Eovaldi going for Texas. Also, one just kind of reminder, with it being opening day, you're just not really going to find many spots that you love because every team is throwing their best pitcher. Obviously, that means different things for different teams. There will be some weaker pitchers on the slate, but in general, if you're approaching stacks and saying like, oh, well, I don't want to take hitters against XYZ pitcher, good luck making lineups today because for the most part, pitching is very, very good. And then obviously people are going to be targeting against the weaker pitchers at a higher rate. So just keep in mind everything is important with context. There's just a lot of really good pitchers going today. Now, starting here with Boston, taking on the Rangers. Again, Crochet, obviously very, very good. Projected for 26% ownership across 150 lineups. I'd be getting to about half of that at 12%. It's not a knock at all on Crochet, but I do think that there is kind of the inverse effect of what I was just saying with offenses. And obviously, most of the teams you're going to be getting to are facing good pitchers. There's an abundance of good pitchers today. And yes, ownership is going to gravitate towards a few of them, Crochet being one. And it is deserved. He is very, very, very good. 35.1% strikeout percentage last year was actually the highest of any pitcher going today. He only walked 5.5% of hitters. In his most recent spring training start, he threw 90 pitches. Everything looks really, really good for Garrett Crochet. But at the same time, he is getting 25, 26% ownership. And there is no shortage of good starters that you can get to at lower ownership to save some ownership in your lineups that way. Usually, as the season goes on, you will find yourself, or at least find me, being more concentrated on the top end pitching, the chalkier pitching, and then spreading things out across offenses. But usually on those slates, you have a bunch of mediocre pitchers going and only a couple aces. So the slate is a little bit different. I will also say I'm playing 50 lineups on DraftKings, not 150. And I do think in those 50, I'm actually closer to the field on Crochet than I would be if I were playing 150. So again, just as a reminder, and this is true for every sport, that individual player level exposures, while they are interesting to talk about, obviously it's what I'm doing right now. It's what people do on most shows. It's what people ask about the most. It's not the most important thing. You want to be looking and thinking about things more at a lineup level, and you can absolutely make plenty of good lineups that have Garrett Crochet and are just sacrificing ownership elsewhere. But he is obviously one of the highest projected pitchers on the slate. He is getting the most or second most ownership as well. Good option, just one that I don't have a ton of. in 150 lineups. But again, I am closer to the field in the 50 lineups that I'm playing that I ran before the show. As far as the offense goes, not getting to too much Boston here. They are getting like 5 to 10% ownership across the board. And I expect that I'll just be getting to some offenses that are getting a little bit lower ownership because, again, you have a bunch of very similar good pitchers going today. The Park's fine for offense. Nathan Eovaldi is a good pitcher, but you do have a Red Sox offense that does have plenty of upside, plenty of power in this lineup. So I don't have any real issues with them. Going back to the start of last season, 175 expected ISO allowed to left-handed hitters for Eovaldi, 116 to righties. Ideally, you would be getting to some left-handed power here. Tristan Casas getting 8% ownership. Jarren Duran getting 11%. Plenty of stolen base upside for Duran as well. But it does look like a team that I'm getting a bit less than the field. You also have Rafael Devers batting second. I apparently don't have any of him right now. Field getting the 14%. I just don't have him, which again, I'm fine with if I'm not getting to a ton of Boston stacks, but clearly there's nothing wrong with getting to Devers either. He is relatively expensive at 4,900. On the other side, going up against Crochet, Texas, again, another offense that does have plenty of upside here. And this is one that I'm getting a bit of, and it makes sense given that I'm not getting to a ton of Crochet, because one thing that does make baseball different and more interesting from a strategy standpoint than a lot of other sports is that you can take advantage of negative correlation against popular players, especially if you're not getting to a lot of those players in particular. Obviously, Crochet is not very likely to have a bad game. He's one of the best pitchers on the slate, but he is going to be in a quarter of the field's lineups. And in lineups where you don't have Crochet, it is worth considering getting to some of these very high upside Texas bats and just hoping that it's one of those few starts that Crochet does have a rough start, or even that Crochet is fine and then the bullpen just gives it up for 2 or 3 innings. It doesn't really matter, how you get there, but there is some added power to saying, well, if these Rangers bats do well, there is an increased chance that Crochet didn't do well, and that 25% of those lineups are dead. Semien, Seager, Berger, Langford, Garcia, plenty of power, plenty of speed in this lineup. So again, not a team that is likely to come through, but still about a 4 implied run total that's in line with most teams on this slate. And there is obviously upside here with power and stolen base upside. That's something to keep in mind too when you're looking at team totals. Not all teams are created equally. You're not trying to just get 4 runs out of whatever offense you stack. And when a team like Texas does have a big game, it's likely to be in a way that is very useful for DFS with home runs, with stolen bases, as opposed to some other teams that it's more likely to be singles and doubles and still not all that useful for DFS. Jake said, would you run the same 20 lineups in the DK Marquee and DK 20 Max, or would you make some adjustments for field size? I would just run 40 different lineups because it gives you a greater chance of having a lineup that wins something. And it's not like you're sacrificing anything because you can make way more than 20 lineups that are basically the same and project the same ownership, all of that. So I would just play 40 different lineups anyway. If your question is, would I approach them the same? Yeah, pretty much. Like the field size is obviously different, but you're still playing large field stuff. Like I think the relationship between projection and ownership in those contests is going to be similar enough that I wouldn't care too much. But if you're just playing 20 in the Marquee and 20 in the 20 Max, I would play 40 different lineups just because it gives you a better chance of fitting on something. Moving on to Philadelphia taking on Washington, 4.5 implied run total here for the Phillies, one of the higher marks on this slate. Mackenzie Gore going for the Nats, Zach Wheeler going for the Phillies. Mackenzie Gore is good. He has very good strikeout stuff. Last season, Gore struck out 24.8% of hitters, 3.87 xFIP. Had to scroll down further than I'm used to for Mackenzie Gore, but it's because of obviously how many good pitchers are on this slate. He held righties last year to a 117 expected ISO, 153 expected ISO allowed to lefties. If you go back to the 2023 season, he did give up a bit more power, 161 expected ISO against righties going back to the start of 2023, 174 to lefties. And the Phillies are another team that there's just a lot of upside here. They are getting similar ownership to the Red Sox, but I am having an easier time getting to them. Trey Turner, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, just tons and tons of power upside here for the Phillies. So I do like that, even though, obviously I think Gore's a good pitcher. And like I was just saying, he did do a better job limiting power last year than he has in the past. Still just getting to this Philly offense that does have a ton of power upside. I'm a little bit below the field on Zach Wheeler, $9,500 price tag for him, coming in around 10% of my lineups. He's like many, many other pitchers on this slate, just looks like a solid option. 3.3 xFIP, 28.5% strikeout percentage for Wheeler. Nothing particularly interesting to say about him. He just looks very similar to a lot of other guys on this slate. I think the price tag on him is fine. On the Washington side, one of the lower implied run totals on the slate, and not getting to much of them. Fields not getting to much of them either. Wheeler obviously is a very good pitcher. Not a lot that I think you can really pick on there. Going back to last season, did give up a 175 expected ISO to lefties while striking out 26.5%, struck out 30.5% of righties. He held them to an expected ISO below 100. So if you are looking to pick off individual bats against Wheeler, I would be looking more for left-handed power bats here. And that is what you're seeing. Not that I'm getting to a lot of any of them, but Luis Garcia, Nathaniel Lowe, CJ Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, James Wood, Josh Bell. These are all guys that do have some power upside from the left side of the plate. And I'm a little bit over the field, but nothing too crazy. They're not making any sort of a difference in the overall, how I would expect my day to go. If the Nats do really well, I don't have that much of them, even though I am a little bit over the field. If they don't do well, it's not really impacting anything. But I do like that the Nats I am getting to are the ones that are going to profile the best against somebody like Zach Wheeler, given that Wheeler has allowed basically no power whatsoever to right-handed bats this season. Mackenzie Gore as a contrarian play at 6,600. Tough matchup here against the Phillies. But just from a talent standpoint, 6,600 is obviously inexpensive for Gore. He has good strikeout upside, like I said. But everything also, again, is relative. On a lot of slates, if you get a $6,600 Mackenzie Gore, you're going to want to play a lot of him even in a dangerous matchup just because he's going to have more strikeout upside than most pitchers priced around him. He's going to have some of the most strikeout upside on the slate. But on today's slate, he's kind of just a middle-of-the-road strikeout guy, even though he does strike out about 25% of hitters. So perfectly fine to use in some lineups where, you're paying up for bats, you're trying to sacrifice some salary at pitcher. You can see here, this lineup, I don't even know what this is, 3-2-2 stack that has Mike Trout, O'Neal Cruz, Jose Ramirez in it, paying down, a pitcher with Gore and Gray. This one, we have a 4-4 stack with the pretty expensive Astros and then the Twins, getting to Evaldi and Gore, so paying down for a couple pitchers there. And, not a lot of ownership coming into the bats in this lineup either. So if you are paying up for some offenses, I think that mixing Gore into those lineups at low ownership makes sense, but not something that I plan to be prioritizing here. Atlanta taking on the Padres. Remember, Petco Park was a very, very home run friendly park last season, so that is something to keep in mind. We have Chris Sale on the mound for the Braves. For the Padres, we have Michael King. He was very solid last year as well. Sale getting 16% ownership. I'm right around the field there. $9,300 price tag. Difficult matchup, but very, very good pitcher. One of the better strikeout pitchers on the slate. Fourth highest strikeout percentage of anybody pitching today. Third highest strikeout percentage of any pitchers on this slate last year at 32.1%. 2.64 xFIP. Happy to be getting to some Chris Sale here at 9,300. And happy to be getting to some Braves bats, even though the matchup isn't ideal. Anytime you can get to the Braves at low ownership, it's not something I'm going to be upset about. They have a lot of power in their lineup. Obviously, not having Ronald Acuna hurts, but still a very high upside lineup here. Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Marcelo Ozuna, Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, all in the middle of that lineup, giving you stolen base upside and power upside, getting about 2x on Ozuna, 2x on Profar, who is leading off at an affordable 4K price tag. Austin Riley, Drake Baldwin as a cheap catching option, hitting 7th. Ozzie Albies, reasonably priced. Perfectly fine getting to these hitters. And as I said, Petco Park was better for home runs last year as well. King himself, though, did do a good job limiting power. Only a 132 expected ISO to righties, 135 to lefties. So there wasn't a power split there between lefties and righties. He did strike righties out 32% of the time, though, compared to 24% against lefties. So all things equal, I would prefer still getting to left-handed bats, but obviously not going to be upset about getting to Austin Riley or Marcell Ozuna either. On the San Diego side, going up against Sale, tough matchup there. Decent pricing, 4,700 for Machado, not super expensive. 5,500 for Tatis, not super expensive. Lefty Jackson Merrill, 5,300. So there is a lot of upside here at affordable enough pricing. Not that those guys are cheap, but for their talent level, for the upside they give you, you're certainly not overpaying. Lefties last year struck out 36% of the time with a sub 100 expected ISO against Sale. Righties struck out 31% of the time, 111 expected ISO. Just gave up no power whatsoever to either side of the plate. I would rather be getting to the Braves side than the Padres side in this game, but I have small amounts of both, but a bit more of the Braves. Padres taking on the Marlins, and this is an offense I'm getting to, and I don't particularly want to, but also I get it, I guess. They're affordable. They let me get to good pitching, but the park sucks. The offense is not great. There are a couple, obviously, very high upside hitters here. The matchup against Alcantara is not great. But one thing that you do have kind of going for you is that we don't know, we haven't had Sandy Alcantara pitching in the majors in a season or over a season, whatever it was exactly. He's likely to be very good. He was throwing really hard in spring training. He is a good pitcher in general, but you don't have a lot of ownership coming into the Pirates here. Basically like 5 to 7% ownership across the board, with the exception of O'Neal Cruz, who we know has some power upside and stolen base upside. Brian Reynolds has plenty of power upside. Tommy Pham is very cheap and batting leadoff. Joey Bart gives you some power upside as a $3,600 catching option. So I think what's driving up the Pirates for me, even though I don't like the park, I don't love the matchup, I think it really just has to do with the fact that I'm not going to love matchups in pretty much any spot on this slate, but the lineups are just going to project well. It's going to be easy to get the Skeens. They positively correlate with Skeens as well, which doesn't hurt. But if we look at some of the 5-man Pirate stacks that I'd be getting to, my assumption is I'm going to have good secondary stacks, good one-offs, and really high upside pitching. So if we look at this first one, Paul Skeens, Hunter Green, high upside pitching options, and then getting to Trey Turner as a one-off. Obviously, that's a good spot to be at. And then a couple of solid Cardinals bats. Go down to the next one. You have Crochet and Sale, so two of the highest upside pitching options. 5-man Pirate stack, Lamont Wade, Otto Lopez, Bobby Witt one-off. So obviously Wade and Lopez, not super exciting, but you do have Bobby Witt with Crochet and Sale. That's giving you a lot of upside. Wheeler, Skeens, Trey Turner one-off, Wheeler, Skeens, Willie Adames, Marcus Semien. So there is plenty of upside here around the Pirate stacks. Not to say that the Pirates themselves don't have upside. Any team does, but they certainly offer a bit less than other teams that we've talked about so far. Not a ton of power, especially in this park, but they are affordable. They do allow you to build lineups where essentially you're saying, well, if the Pirates do happen to do well, these lineups are going to be really strong because I have really good pitching. I have strong one-offs, strong mini stacks around them. 2023, the last season that Alcantara pitched, 160 expected ISO allowed to righties with a 19% strikeout percentage, 144 to lefties. If you go back to the start of the 2022 season, 130 expected ISO to righties, 134 to lefties. So again, not a ton of power given up, but pretty low strikeout percentages, especially in the context of this slate. Pirates are relatively likely to be able to put the ball in play compared to a lot of other teams. And again, your lineups are just going to project well overall, and you're going to make up some of the upside by getting two really good pitchers and getting to strong one-offs, strong mini stacks. Michael Henry said, I'm torn on Hunter Green today. High risk, high reward. I'm right there with you. I know on FanDuel, I'm over on Green and I'm over on the Giants. And in my 50 lineups on DraftKings, I'm not positive, but I think I'm either around the field or over on Green and over on the Giants. Not sure how they look in this 150 set, but that is an approach I'm taking. So I'm right there with you. Miami here going up against Skeens. And one thing that I do think is interesting, you saw it when I had the Pirates up, 20% Skeens, 36% projected ownership. In my 50 lineup set, I am around the field on Skeens. When I branch it out to 150, he does drop off a little bit. So just like I was saying with Crochet, keep in mind on this show, on any show where people are talking about their individual player exposures, it's going to matter how many lineups they're playing and also the specific lineups, obviously, that they're playing, because I'm sure you can make 150 plus EV looking Paul Skeens lineups if you want to. So it matters, how you are diversifying, what exactly you're doing there. There's a lot of things to go into it. It's not simply saying like, oh, I don't know why 35% of the field's playing Paul Skeens. I have a very good idea why 35% of the field's playing Paul Skeens, and I have no issue with it whatsoever, even though in this 150 lineup set, I would have less. Skeens still should be one of the pitchers that you are looking at the most here. If you're not playing Skeens, getting to some Miami makes some sense here, but I don't love it on this particular slate just because there are so many games. There's good hitters parks, and you're just facing one of, if not the best pitchers on the slate in a pitcher-friendly park. And, he's getting 35% ownership, give or take. It's not like he's at 60, 65, 70%. Even if Paul Skeens has a disappointing day, Skeens isn't somebody that you need to have. There's a pretty good chance that you also still don't need the Marlins. So I'm not getting too much Miami off offensively. That doesn't surprise me at all. I am 2x the field on Alcantara, which is interesting to me. 7,700, solid price tag. Like I was just saying when I talked about the Pirates bats, Alcantara is not a great strikeout pitcher, especially in the context of pitchers on today's slate. But he is somebody that works very deep into games typically. The Marlins have said he is not going to be limited this season. So I assume he's going to be pretty much good to go right out of the gate. I am double checking his spring training starts right now, but they said that he wasn't going to be limited. I know he was throwing very hard in spring training, so that was good to see. In his most recent spring start, he did only throw 48 pitches. The most he threw in any spring start was 57. But again, assuming even that he's throwing like 80, 85 pitches here, at 7,700, you don't need the complete game out of him. That's more something that you needed back when he was 9K or 10K, coming off of what I think was a Cy Young season a couple years ago. At 7,700, you're just getting a talented pitcher at a modest price tag, and most importantly, not much ownership. So not somebody I'm going crazy on, but I do think at sub 10% ownership, getting to some Alcantara in lineups where you are playing maybe more popular pitching, more popular stacks, some combination of both. There's nothing wrong with that, but wouldn't call him a priority here. Just in sports, that if you were playing high stakes single entry, would you just eat Skeens and Kikuchi? Possibly. Normally, I would say probably, because normally you don't have as many good pitching options. Today, it still would matter, one, on ownership projections for those specific contests, which I haven't looked at. If ownership is really getting driven up on Skeens, Kikuchi, especially Kikuchi, I could see just like turning him into somebody else. But I certainly wouldn't have a problem with it. Like, I don't think I can really give a better answer than that without having run anything, because I'm sure I could find a lineup that doesn't have one or both of them that I would really like for small field. But I wouldn't have any issue playing them together in small field stuff. Generally, I do end up eating pitcher chalk even a little bit more in tournaments like that. It just might be a little bit different today since you do have such an abundance of options that are very, very good. Angels taking on, speaking of Kikuchi, Angels taking on the White Sox in Chicago. Obviously a very good spot for Kikuchi. He turned things around career-wise last season, was very good. 28% strikeout percentage, 3.2 xFIP, only walked 6% of hitters. The strikeout ability has always been there for him. He's always been a tempting DFS option just because he'd strike guys out, but he would also give up a ton of power. He frequently would just, have bad starts and was always a very risky option, but seemingly figured that out last year. Held righties to a respectable 153 expected ISO. Lefties had a 178 expected ISO, had about a 28% strikeout percentage against both sides of the plate. And then now you just get this White Sox team that does not belong in the major leagues. They are very, very bad. Essentially, you have to worry about Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn. That's it. I mean, obviously, they're kind of major league hitters. You have Miguel Vargas leading off. He was highly regarded in the Dodgers organization before he got to the White Sox and appeared to just not give a shit about baseball anymore, which I think playing for the White Sox just probably causes to happen. But you do have him leading off. Maybe he can hit. Benintendi is whatever. He'll put together some annoying, frustrating at bats, but he's not a great hitter, certainly not a power hitter. Austin Slater typically hits left-handed pitching well, but whatever. And then the bottom of this order is just absolute garbage. Like if Kikuchi's not on, obviously, like they're still major league hitters or at least AAA hitters, and they can do some damage. But assuming Kikuchi just has some semblance of his normal stuff, it is a very, very good spot here. Now I am not getting to much of him, which scares the shit out of me, but 18% ownership, I'm only getting to 3%. I think what basically you're seeing here is that I'm probably just turning Kikuchi into some Mackenzie Gore, turning him into some Sandy Alcantara, turning him into some Sonny Gray. I know I have haven't gotten to that game yet, but I do have a lot of him. I think that's probably just kind of what you're seeing happen. But Kikuchi is underpriced. The matchup is great. Everything looks good for him. I'm just kind of losing him probably for ownership reasons, but yeah, like great spot for Kikuchi, no question about that. For the Angels, there is 18% ownership coming into Mike Trout, and then some 5 to 10% ownership coming into most of the rest of their lineup. And I'm just not getting much of it. I think that they are in one of the better spots today. They have one of the highest implied run totals on the slate. They are going up against Sean Burke, who they announced him as their starter a week or two ago, and I literally had no idea who he was. He apparently went to the University of Maryland, so that's cool. Good for him. Hopefully he has a good career. I'll be rooting for him, especially today, I guess. But, in the context of opening day pitchers, even if you do think this guy is good, which maybe he is, maybe he's not, he certainly doesn't look like one of the better ones. Steamer projection, 4.9 FIP, 4.69 xFIP. The bat has him with a 4.67 FIP. Again, just in the context of pitchers today, it's pretty easy to say that this dude is not one of the better ones going. And so you are going to get ownership coming into the Angels, just like you're going to get ownership coming into Kikuchi. But there's just so many other offenses that I can get to that are a little bit lower owned. That's the path that I am taking right now. But again, if you can find lineups where maybe you're sacrificing ownership and pitcher and you can get to these Angels bats, maybe you have a low owned secondary stack, the Angels are fine. It's one of the better spots on the slate. Obviously, Mike Trout gives you a ton of upside. Logan O'Hoppe for a catcher is solid. Brent Hefo gives you some stolen base and power upside. Solera gives you power upside if he hits the ball. Sean Newell is cheap and generally, can get on base, put the ball in play. So it is a good spot to get to. I think the ownership is just kind of pushing me away a little bit. On the White Sox side, if this were last year, I would have a lot of the White Sox. I have refined my process a bit and am happy to see that I am not jamming the White Sox. That's a great sign. But I am a little bit over the field. I think it's kind of just similar to, Texas or spots like that where Kikuchi is getting 15 to 20% ownership. I don't want an abundance of White Sox stacks here. He's not getting enough ownership that if he pitches poorly, I automatically am at the top and winning the slate. If he pitches poorly, there's still a pretty good chance that several other teams are outscoring the White Sox. So I don't want to go too crazy on the leverage stacks there, but you do get upside with a $3,300 Vargas leading off. Luis Robert is actually good, assuming he cares at least a little bit. Andrew Vaughn has power. Benintendi is 3,100 batting third. So from a value standpoint, you can make some quality lineups around them. If we look at like a 5-man White Sox stack, I even have those. So I have no 5-man White Sox stacks. I'm probably using them mostly as like a secondary stack. But if we look at like what a 4-man White Sox stack could look like, Cole Reagans and Paul Skeens, obviously you're happy with that. Patrick Bailey, so you have a 4-man White Sox, 3-man Giants with a Jarren Duran one-off. So very strong Jarren Duran one-off, and then upside with Bailey, Chapman, Adames. Crochet, Sale, clearly going to be happy there. Bobby Witt, Pasquantino, Perez. So it's a 4-4 White Sox, Kansas City. Like you can see, getting to these White Sox allows the rest of your line to look very good. It's just that the White Sox are really, 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 really bad. And I don't want to go too crazy on getting to them. Before we move on to the final 4 games, as a reminder, projections, Utical's projections are available at Run the Sims. Use the promo code that you see on the bottom of your screen, UTA MLB. The link to sign up is in the description below. If you wait till April 7th, that is the target date for our full model to go live. The discount goes away then. It'll be $100 a month. But either way, I am really, really excited about these projections, seeing what goes into them and everything that we have worked on to make them happen. Really excited about that. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to using those. So check those out either today or wait till April 7th, but definitely recommend checking those out. Really excited that those are there at runthesims.com. San Francisco taking on the Reds in Great American. In case you forgot, this is a great place to hit. We have quality pitching with Hunter Green going for the Reds and Logan Webb going for the Giants, but still a very good offense, or very good park for offense, rather. San Francisco, I know I'm getting to on FanDuel. I am getting to them a bit more than the field, it looks like, on DraftKings as well in these 150 lineups. I think I might have even had a little bit more in the 50 lineups that I am playing. But Willy Adames, 4,300 at shortstop, I like quite a bit. Gives you stolen base upside, gives you power upside. Huge park upgrade here. Obviously, he hasn't even played a game yet in San Francisco, but you kind of already have San Francisco pricing on the Giants, even though it's opening day. You can tell that the DraftKings pricing algorithm just spits out, obviously factors in home park, even though it hasn't been a factor yet this year, because these guys are way too talented for the dirt cheap pricing that they have. You do obviously have pinch hit risk in general with the Giants, but especially somebody like Willy Adames should be fine. Matt Chapman should be fine. These guys aren't going anywhere. Patrick Daly's not getting pinch hit for. Ramos probably staying in the lineup. They're starting him against a righty. You have some risk with like Wade and Lee, but they're also really, really cheap hitting at the top of the order, and it's no guarantee they get pinch hit for. A lot of times if this is like an 8-0 game after 5 innings, they'll just leave them in, not worry about matchups. So I do like the upside that you get here for the Giants. I do also like that they are cheap. Hunter Green, of course, is a very, very good strikeout pitcher. Last year, he struck out 27.7% of hitters. One thing that really does stand out from last year, too, that sucks if you're going to the Giants, Green actually only allowed 0.72 home runs per 9 innings. In the past, he had some power issues. They went away last year. 108 expected ISO to righties. He did only strike them out 24% of the time, but really did a good job limiting power. Lefties only had a 121 expected ISO with a 31% strikeout percentage. So we did see Green take a step forward last year as far as not being as boom or bust as he had been earlier in his career. That being said, this park itself just still makes whoever is facing him a high upside offense. So I'm happy to get to the Giants, especially at these prices. But I do think it's worth keeping in mind that, Hunter Green, very highly touted pitching prospect when he was drafted, when he came up, had some, boom or bust tendencies, but seems to, at least last year, have straightened out the bust part and just is a good strikeout pitcher, good pitcher overall. Logan Webb, 6% ownership. I'm getting to 8%. Nothing really to say there. Reasonable price at $7,500. Park downgrade for him, obviously, going into Cincinnati. Not a great strikeout pitcher, but a very good real life pitcher. Last season, he only struck out 20.5% of the hitters he faced. That ranks him 23rd of all pitchers going today, which obviously is a problem, and it's going to keep him from being too popular. But he did have a 3.28 xFIP. He is a good pitcher overall, but just not somebody that I think you can really prioritize on a slate that has as many aces as today. On the other side for Cincinnati, Hunter Green is getting 12% ownership. I'm at 18%. Plenty of strikeout upside, but again, dangerous matchup here against the Giants. So I like, as I mentioned earlier, as somebody mentioned earlier in chat, I like having Hunter Green. I like having Giants bats. And the thing that really makes that especially true is the pricing that you're getting. $7,400 on Hunter Green, and then all those really cheap Giants prices. Yeah, there are going to be some games where this is just like 4-3 and Hunter Green is decent, and the Giants are decent, and nobody wins. But there's a lot of games where Hunter Green is just going to dominate the Giants, and he's going to pitch like a $9K pitcher, a $9,500 pitcher. And there's going to be a lot of games where the Giants just hit like they're capable of in Great American Park, and they light up Hunter Green, and they're a $5,500 across the board offense. Using median projections only gets you so far. And both sides of this have very, very high ceilings at very inexpensive price tags relative to those ceilings. So I like being over on Green here. I like that I was getting to the Giants. I like having both sides of this one. If I had to choose one side, I'd probably go Green. But really, I just like getting to both sides here. And this was the case, I think I mentioned already on FanDuel as well, where he's projected for like 3, 4, 5% ownership. I think I had like 10%. And I think the Giants were like my second highest owned stack behind the Orioles or something like that. So this game, hopefully something from this game does well, at least as far as the Giants offense and Hunter Green is concerned. I'm not really getting to much of the Reds. And I don't mind that. Obviously, it's a great park to hit in. Ellie De La Cruz, if you can find the $5,700 salary, is elite. Tons of stolen base upside, tons of power upside. Obviously, all of that is true. Very, very good player, great DFS player, getting around 10% ownership. But overall, Webb is a pitcher that does generally do a pretty good job of limiting hard contact, just being difficult to hit. The Reds' offense is, I think, solid. Like there is some upside here, but it's just one that I'm not really getting much of. They are getting some ownership, but nothing too crazy. Overall, I think there's just other spots that I prefer. Mets taking on the Astros in Houston. For the Mets, we have Clay Holmes making not his debut, but his first start. Getting the opening day start here for the Mets. Framber Valdez is going for the Astros. And I am getting to a lot of Mets, which is not super appealing against Framber Valdez. But one thing that I do like is that, again, keeping it in context of today's slate and how many good pitchers there are, at least Framber Valdez is typically going to let you put the ball in play. He struck out righties 22.8% of the time last year. That's not bad, but it's one of the lower marks on this slate. He is generally very, very good at limiting power, making you hit the ball straight into the ground. It's not an appealing matchup by any stretch. Only a 111 expected ISO allowed to righties last year, 295 expected WOBA. But the point I'm getting to here is you're going to let Pete Alonso put the ball in play. You're going to let Francisco Lindor hit the ball. Juan Soto obviously is a lefty, and Valdez does strike him out at a higher rate, but he is Juan Soto. Mark Vientos has a bunch of power. Brandon Nimmo gives you upside. Marte gives you upside. The Mets just are another team kind of in that mix with some of the ones from the beginning of the show, where when you think about what it looks like when they do well, it's really appealing at low ownership in DFS. It's a lot of home runs. It's a lot of power. There's some stolen bases in there too. I'm not predicting that they do well against Valdez. They probably won't. The assumption for any offense against any major league pitcher any given day is that they're not going to do well. That's just how things work. But when it does go well for the Mets, it comes with tournament wins and a lot of home runs and some stolen bases. And so getting very little ownership here, I am happy to be getting to the Mets. I'm right around the field on 6K Clay Holmes. He is fully stretched out for anybody that was wondering about that. But obviously the matchup's not ideal against Houston, and there's plenty of good pitching on this slate. On the Astros side, Framber Valdez, 8% ownership. I'm getting to 13%. So, again, across 150 lineups, I'm a little bit overweight on him. I'm overweight on the Mets. I don't think he's a priority, but I do think 8,300 is a pretty solid salary for his skill set. Not a great strikeout pitcher, as I was saying. You saw him ramp up the strikeouts a couple years ago, but then come back down to earth last year. As far as the offenses go, mostly in line with the field on Houston. Not a great spot against Holmes, but you do kind of, like I was saying, with Sandy Alcantara, where, he didn't pitch at all last year. Maybe there's some rust in his first, regular season start. For Holmes, he's just starting, and that's not what he has done in the past. So there is some added volatility here of, what does it look like when Clay Holmes starts a regular season game? So that is nice. Obviously, you have a lot of talent here on Houston, even with Bregman gone. Altuve, 5K, second base and outfield eligible, so you can get him into more roster spots now. Diaz for a catcher, gives you some power. Yordan Alvarez, obviously great if you can get there. Love this ballpark for Isaac Paredes. That is something that, obviously I'm not getting a ton of him today, but it is something just to keep in mind. He is a dead pull hitter. When he hits home runs, they are pulled fly balls down the left field line. In Tropicana Field, that is not good, where, he has spent most of his career in Tampa. In Houston, that is very good because you have the Crawford boxes in left field. It is a short porch in left for a dead pull hitter. Houston knew what they were doing when they got this guy. It is a perfect park fit for Isaac Paredes. So that is something just to keep in mind in general. Christian Walker obviously gives you a lot of power. Cam Smith, 2,400 at third base, making his major league debut. So plenty of upside here, and I'm pretty much around the field. This is a game that Cleveland, Kansas City was grading out well for me just as far as offenses that I'm getting to. Looking at that is PGA weather, so that does not do me any good. But I think it's, going from memory, I think it's relatively warm in Kansas City today. Yeah, upper 70s, wind blowing out. So good hitting weather in Kansas City, and it is making these offenses look pretty good, even though Cole Reagans obviously is a very good pitcher that I don't particularly love taking hitters against. The hitting conditions themselves are very appealing here. Jose Ramirez, 5,800. I'm over the field on him. Again, I don't like the matchup here against Reagans. He has one of the best changeups in baseball. He's very, very, very difficult to hit against, but that's just going to be the case for most pitchers today. Righties last year against Reagans, 127 expected ISO, 32% strikeout percentage. But Jose Ramirez is really, really good. Lane Thomas is cheap at 3,500. This offense in general, outside of Ramirez, is very cheap. And so I think that is what is driving them up a bit also. Also, you'll see that I'm not just like jamming this entire offense. I'm getting to Jose Ramirez, Lane Thomas, Carlos Santana, and Steven Kwan, the guys that I would like really want to be getting to. John Kensey, Noel, easier to say, or not that easy to say. 3K, gives you power upside. But Thomas, Santana, Kwan, very cheap. And then Ramirez, obviously just really, really good. So probably using them kind of more so as mini stacks maybe than full 5-mans. You can see not a lot of full 5-mans. I am getting to them as 4-mans, getting them as 3-mans, using them a lot as 2-man stacks. So I think that makes sense too. And again, good hitting conditions here. Not getting to pitching. Tanner Bybee was scratched, so we have Ben Lively making the start. He is pretty far down the list of pitchers that I would want on opening day. On the KC side, getting to a lot of them as well. Again, they get a matchup upgrade now. We thought they were going to be facing Tanner Bybee. They are facing Ben Lively. One thing that I will say as caution here, and again, it's not keeping me from getting to Kansas City. Obviously, as you can see on the screen, I think they look good. And no matter how you slice it, it's better to be facing Ben Lively than Tanner Bybee. But one thing that, and I've never actually dug into data on this, so this is anecdotal, but it makes sense with what you know about sports, professional sports, and baseball in general. I do think there's a tendency to kind of overestimate the impact when you go from like a good starter like Bybee to a less good starter like Lively. These guys have been poring over scouting reports and training and all of that for a Tanner Bybee matchup, and then now you're just getting a totally different pitcher. So while Lively is not as good as Bybee, you do have that trade-off where he is less talented, but you now have like a 2-hour window to reprogram everything to face Ben Lively, everything in your brain to face Ben Lively when you were facing Tanner Bybee. It's not the same as, when you were in high school and you don't have scouting reports on anybody. You're just standing in the box, seeing what they throw and hitting it. If somebody has worse stuff, you're just going to hit it better. The only way you have any chance in hell of hitting in the major leagues is video, scouting reports, pitching machines that are simulating the stuff that guys throw. And so when you just, have a 2-hour window to say, all of that's gone. Now it's Ben Lively, that can have a negative impact. All of that being said, I like KC here. Goes without saying, getting to a lot of Bobby Witt is good. Salvador Perez is going to be one of your best catching options pretty much anytime he plays. Vinny Pasquantino is a strong option at first base. I like Massey at second base. India at second base. This is really the only issue with Kansas City. 2 of your top 5 hitters are second base only. So obviously that affects stacking. You can only play one of them in a given lineup. Ownership is pretty flat between the 2 of them with Massey and India. So we don't get a situation, like sometimes if you have 2 first basemen, you'll get 15% ownership to one of them and 3% to the other. And you can just automatically have a contrarian stack by using the other one. You don't get that here at second base. So that does suck. But you can see that I did basically flip Massey to India's ownership and flip India to Massey's ownership, which isn't a big difference, but interesting to look at. Kyle Isbell batting 9th at 2,400. Very, very cheap if you need that, especially as part of a stack. Renfroe obviously gives you power upside. Last season, Ben Lively, 145 expected ISO to righties, 174 to lefties. You would prefer left-handed power if you can find it, but that's not going to dissuade me from playing Bobby Witt or Perez or guys like that. Vot said, do you think pitching is going to be called around 85 or do you think some are stretched out? It depends on the pitcher. Some of them are stretched out. Skeens 2 starts ago in spring training through 85 pitches. Crochet in his most recent start through like 91. I think Clay Holmes got up to like 90 in his most recent start. So somebody like Alcantara, who I happened to mention earlier, I think didn't go above like 57 pitches in the spring. They've said he's not limited, but I assume he's kind of limited at least. But some of these guys are fully stretched out, and it really, will probably come down more so to what exactly is going on in the game. Like if Skeens gets through 6 innings at 88, 89 pitches, I don't know if he comes back, but if he gets through 6 innings or 5 innings at like 78, I'd assume he's coming back, something like that. So it depends on the pitching. If you're trying to find it for yourself, it's actually really easy. It's a lot easier to find than you would expect. It's on the MLB website. So if you just Google like Paul Skeens spring training, the first link that's going to come up is to MLB.com. And then you can just go in and it brings you right to the stats page. Go to game logs and then switch regular season to spring training. And it has all of his spring starts with how many innings he pitched, how many pitches he threw. And you can do that for any starter. So if there's somebody you want, specific information on, it's actually it's a lot easier to find than you expect it to be. But as far as it being a general question, I think it's very starting pitcher specific. Final game, Minnesota taking on the Cards in St. Louis. We do have sort of weather concerns here, but I think it should be fine. And I'm getting the pitching in this game, which, given who is pitching, I think is fine. Given that they are relatively low owned, you have some decent pricing here. The matchups are not great, but Pablo Lopez, I'm like 3x the field. He's projected for 5% ownership. I'm getting the 15%. Lopez is just a good pitcher here, and this park is perfectly fine to pitch in, especially this time of year. St. Louis is very similar to Baltimore weather-wise, where obviously the dimensions in Busch Stadium are a little bit less friendly than Camden Yards, but the ball kind of just dies this time of year, and then over the summer it absolutely flies because of humidity, and then at the end of the season you get a little bit more similar to this time of year. So I do like this park this time of year for pitching as well. Pablo Lopez last season struck out 25.6% of hitters, 3.36 xFIP. If people aren't going to play him, I'm happy to just be getting him in some of my lineups at a very modest price tag. Struck out 28.3% of righties last year, 22.9% of lefties. Looking at the Cardinals lineup, pretty balanced. Nootbaar, Donovan, Burleson, and Scott from the left side. Contreras, Arenado, Herrera, Walker, and Wynn from the right side. Not the scariest lineup overall, though. On the other side for Minnesota, pretty solid lineup, at least at the top. But again, no Royce Lewis. He got hurt already. And you have Sonny Gray going over there. He is, I believe, my highest owned pitcher on DraftKings, which, if you know anything about my history with Sonny Gray, means that the new process that I am trying out this MLB season has me back to doing the same shit I used to do. But 7,800 for Sonny Gray just looks like a good price tag here. Not a great matchup, again, against Minnesota, but he's only 7,800. He is a good pitcher overall. 30.3% strikeout percentage, 2.82 xFIP so far last season. Happy to be getting to him, especially at this price tag. 13% ownership is pretty low. Offensively for the Twins, around 2x the field pretty much throughout the lineup. And, again, it's an offense that does have power and they're not getting much ownership. I like Sonny Gray a lot. I think he's a very good pitcher. I also think Ryan Jeffers, as far as catchers go, has a lot of power. I like Matt Wallner's power upside at 3,900. That guy hits the ball hard. Carlos Correa at shortstop obviously is going to be appealing. $3,200 Harrison Bader batting ninth for value, especially in stacks. Gives you some power, some stolen base upside. Byron Buxton, obviously power upside. I am actually below the field on him. But Jeffers, Wallner, Correa in particular look like good options for me. Also, I'd forgotten to actually pull it up earlier. But Sonny Gray this spring, 80 pitches in each of his 2 most recent starts. So he is relatively stretched out well. On the other side for the Cards going up against Lopez, not getting too much of them at all. Brendan Donovan, my highest owned Cardinal bat, but I'm like half the field, second base outfield eligible. Lopez last season, 142 expected ISO to lefties, 157 to righties. Nothing that really stands out there. So not super interested in the Cards. Now to recap everything, looking at the 150 lineups here, or actually I can just look at my actual player exposures. I didn't want to go through like actual lineups I'm playing for obvious reasons, but 50 lineups for me today in the flagship on DraftKings. 40% Sonny Gray, 36% Paul Skeens, so right around the field on Skeens. 32% Chris Sale, so doubling up there. 28% Crochet, puts me even with the field. A little over 2x on Hunter Green, getting to 28%, and then drop off and just kind of flatten things out across all these other pitchers. So you will see some discrepancies between the 50 I'm playing and the 150 I'd be playing if I were playing 150. And really what causes that most likely is just basically I have a pool of lineups that I think are good enough to choose from. And then obviously I'm prioritizing the ones that look the best in my top 50, and then it's kind of spreading out a little bit. So between lineup 51 and 150, I've kind of used up all of the, Paul Skeens, Derek Crochet lineups in those, in those first 50. And so then it's cycling through some more, Sandy Alcantara, Mackenzie Gore lineups like that. So that's what's causing the difference there. As far as hitters go, we can just go position by position. In the 50 that I'm actually playing, Joey Bart, Logan O'Hoppe, Salvador Perez, Patrick Bailey, Endy Rodriguez, my 5 highest owned catchers. At first base, Sean Noel, Pasquantino, Santana, Harper, Vaughn. Happy with all of that. Bryson Stott, Jonathan India, Michael Massey, Luis Rengifo, Kevin Biggio. Happy with all of that except Biggio. He blows, but whatever. I assume he's cheap. Third base, Ramirez, Chapman, Alec Baum, Connor Falefa. Again, Kevin Biggio. I would rather not be getting there. But he is in a game that I like. He is 2K flat. He does have MPE, so whatever. Suck it up. Bobby Witt, 30%. Trey Turner, Willie Adames, Connor Falefa, and Rengifo. Very happy with any of those guys. Kind of excluding Connor Falefa, but whatever. And then in the outfield, Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz, Lane Thomas, Mike Trout, Stephen Kwan, Bam, Ramos. Really, really happy with all of the outfield exposures there. I think really high ceilings on those guys. Drop Roses said dinger pick. I didn't have one off the top of my head. Trying to think who's like a decent pitcher to pick on. AC sucks for home runs. It's good for offense everywhere else. That's something to keep in mind also. I didn't mention it in that game, but a reminder, difficult to hit home runs in Kauffman Stadium. Very not difficult to actually generate offense, though. So it gets a reputation as a pitcher-friendly park. It's actually a hitter-friendly park where it's just tough to hit home runs. Home run, give me Isaac Paredes. I talked about it specifically. Love this park for him. I'll take Isaac Paredes at home. Pasquantino would be a good pick as well. There's obviously better home run picks than Isaac Paredes on this slate, but I'll take Paredes in the going to the Crawford boxes in Houston. That's all I have for you on this one. Thank you for checking out the show. As I said before, I will be doing these a lot more regularly than I was doing NBA. And don't forget, you can get Utical's MLB projections at the Run the Sim site. Use the promo code below. Use the link below. Uta MLB gets you 10% off until April 7th. Take advantage of those. Really excited about what we're doing over there, so check those out. Otherwise, see you back here tomorrow talking more MLB. Good luck on your opening day slate.